Logic 10 installs with thousands of carefully crafted and perfectly recorded loops of all genres and styles that you'll have at your fingertips, and even more when you download the additional content. In this movie, we'll learn how to compose with these powerful Apple loops and how to use the Apple Loop browser. As you can see here, our project has one audio track, and it's blank, there's nothing in it. Let's open the Loops browser by typing O on our keyboard. Here's the Loop browser. Again, you can open and close it with this Loop button as well. And here is the keyword search. This provides us a whole bunch of keywords to help us search and sort through these thousands of Apple loops to find the one that fits our song. Right now we're looking at the keyword search as indicated by the Note button here. We can also look at more of a typical file browser view if I click that button next to it. But for starters, let's start with the keyword search. So to start our song, I'm going to look for something that's electric. So I'll click that electric button. I think I want it to be electric piano bass, so I'll click that. And you can see Logic is just filtering out different Apple loops that fit these descriptions. And the third keyword I want to use here is grooving. And one more keyword, I want it to be kind of jazzy. So I've used these 4 descriptors to define what style I want, and it narrows it down. And down here I have a list of all the different sounds that fit that description. Let's listen to some of these upbeat electric pianos. So to audition these Apple loops, you can just click on them and Logic will automatically play back the loop. Notice the tempo of the loops differ. This one's 85. These are all actually 85, but notice our project tempo is 100 BPM. The cool thing about Apple loops is they can conform to your project tempo. So as soon as I click on the upbeat electric piano, we'll hear it back in the tempo of not its native tempo, but rather our own project tempo. And it pretty seamlessly does that. So I'm just going to click here and we'll hear the first upbeat electric piano. And as it's playing, I can just use the up and down arrows on my keyboard to choose different sounds and audition those. So just listening through these. So that's the one I like. To stop playback, we can just click the speaker button. And I've decided upbeat electric piano 03 is the one for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this and drag it right into our audio track at position 1111. And it tells me that this contains tempo information. We already knew that because it said the native tempo is 85, but we want to keep our project tempo. So we're going to choose Don't Import. And now it's been brought right into our Logic project main window and right into our first track. Notice it auto-named the track to the same name as the Apple loop. So let's look for some other sounds to go with this. Let's go ahead and we'll use the other type of browser to find the next instrument. And I know in this case I want to add a bass. So I'm going to go to Instruments, and I'm going to go in here and say Acoustic Bass. I want to add an upright bass. I can choose a third keyword here, or not. I can just leave it. You can see it already filtered stuff out. So I'm going to scroll way down here, and I know at the bottom of this list, you can see all these different bass types. We can listen to some of these, like klezmer bend bass, just see what that is. Doesn't really fit my song, but down here at the bottom of this list, I know they're under U because they're called upright funk bass. And I really like these sounds. So here's upright funk bass 1, for example. Yeah, I think that'll fit the sound that I'm going for. So actually there's one down here I've used before, and it's called upright funk bass 18. I'm going to check that one out. Got kind of a spooky sound to it. That's the one I want. Again, I just was able to audition, listen to it. You can always use the up arrow and down arrows to click and audition them. And once you find what you want, notice again, the tempo is 90. It doesn't quite match our project tempo, but because it's an Apple loop, it can conform seamlessly to our project tempo. In this case, I don't even have a track for it, but I'm going to grab it from here and just pull it down below the first track, and Logic will make a upright funk bass 18 track. Hey, it was even smart enough to know to put the upright funk bass graphic icon in there. So that's kind of cool. Let's hear it together with our upbeat piano. Cool, so a couple things to know. First of all, this one was a longer loop. It says beat 16, and if you remember, the upbeat electric piano was only 8 beats long, so twice as long. It's also a monophonic file, and we know that because it has one single loop right up here. Zoom in real close here. I know that for one because it has one single loop here. I can also visually see, comparing it to the electric piano, which is a stereo file, it actually has 2 waveforms in it. So one's the left, one's the right. The funk bass is just one single waveform. Not a big deal, just wanted to show you that that's mono and this is stereo. Let's add some more stuff. So I'm going to go in here and go back to the keyword browser. And if you've done a search before, it's good to click the reset. It seems like it already automatically reset. But one other way to search for sounds in the appleloops browser is to just go up and type in the style, or if you know the name of something, you can go up here and search for it that way. So the thing I want to search for in this case is something that's called a thump hip hop. And it just brings up a bunch of thumpy hip hop bass, which is actually what I want. So if you know the name of the thing, you can go up here and search. You don't even have to get involved in these keywords. And the thing I want to add is thumpy hip hop bass 01. Let's take a listen to it. Cool. So one thing before I add this next sound is notice, if you've probably noticed this already, but some of the Apple loops are green with a note, and other Apple loops, let me just show you what I mean if I go back here. And I want to just show you that there are other Apple loops. We saw them earlier, but I want to just cover this real quick. Some are green and some are blue. What's the difference there? The blue ones have waveform icons in it, and the green ones have notes. It turns out that there's two different types of Apple loops. There's the green Apple loops, which are actually MIDI information and a bunch of other metadata. When you drag these into your main window, they actually load up a instrument patch and bring in MIDI information. Now, by default, that way of doing things is slightly more flexible than just dragging an audio region out there. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go back to search for that thump hip-hop sound. One thing about the browser is you really have to make sure you clear it out or reset it. Well, if I go back to the keywords, then it shows up with my thump hip-hop bass. So you have to really kind of manage. You don't want to have searches going on, and then if you search for something else, it won't quite filter it out. So you kind of have to make sure you go back and reset things. But here we are back in the thump hip-hop, and I see the bass sound we want. So again, this is the green Apple loop. So let me just show you the difference here. I'm going to drag it into an empty area, and you can see Logic already loaded up a patch. Notice the difference with the look of the region. It has a bunch of MIDI notes rather than audio. Now, if you remember back to the beginning of this movie, the upbeat electric piano, believe it or not, was a green Apple loop. And I didn't say anything then. But the thing is, if you drag a green Apple loop into an audio track, basically Logic automatically flattens the MIDI into an audio file. So that's what happened here, and that's totally fine. We did that here. The only difference is it doesn't give you the flexibility to have the MIDI notes at your disposal or to change the sound of the patch. The powerful thing about changing the sound of your patch is, let's listen to this together for a second. Okay, so there's really two basses going on. I don't want that, but I do like the rhythmic pattern of this thumpy hip-hop bass. So just to demonstrate the flexibility of the green Apple loops, I can go ahead and change this sound to a different sound. So instead of having a bass, I can go in here and, for example, choose 70s funk clavinet. And I can use that original pattern that was meant for a bass, but I can make it play a clavinet. Let's hear what that sounds like. So it's pretty cool. It's a little low. Again, it's still conflicting with the bass, but again, because this is MIDI, we have so much more flexibility. So I can go up into the track inspector for the funk clav bass, and I can even alter it more. I'm going to actually use a MIDI effects plugin here, and I'm going to use what we call the transposer. And this just quickly allows me to bring it up an octave. And again, because it's MIDI, it's so flexible. I can just drag the slider, bring it up 24 semitones, which is actually 2 octaves, since 12 semitones is 1 octave. And that just seamlessly makes the notes 2 octaves higher. And I'm using that original pattern that was meant for bass, but to play a clavinet. Let's see how that sounds like. That's great. That's what I want. So I've kind of done a workaround here by using what was originally meant to be a bass MIDI Apple loop, but I altered it, made it my own, and again, the flexibility of the green Apple loops let you do that. So Apple loops, as we've seen here, are powerful and very deep resource to any Logic user. You can use it to embellish your tracks, and it's good to keep in mind the difference between the blue and the green Apple loops, as we've seen here. The blue ones are awesome and they're cool, they sound great, but if you really want the flexibility, the green ones give you that ability to change certain things and even edit the MIDI performance.